So just to tell you,
Yo, where you from, my nigga? Yo, you know where you at?
yo,
Yo, where the fuck you from, nigga?
yo, let's talk it over, yo.
Let's talk it over, let's talk it over, let's talk it over now. Let's talk it over, let's talk it over.
5 carats on her finger, got her hand smitten. But everybody get a ring, even Scottie Pippen. Everybody got a thing, but I guess mine isn't. With my vision, so I just sits in my Lamborghini, let my top 5 with me. Kick back and get high with me.
So let's talk about the hood, man. All right, now, Urban Dictionary defines the hood as a place where shit goes down, like gang banging, drug dealing, killing, a place where you wouldn't want to be. Do I agree? Somewhat. But before we get into that, let's get into a little history lesson. A usual synonym for the hood is the ghetto. One of the first established ghettos in the world was the Venetian ghetto in Venice. Venice is a city in northeast Italy, and this ghetto was established in 1516. This section of the city is where Venice housed all of their Jewish residents forcibly. They didn't have a choice due to religious persecution. They were forced to be confined into one area. This section of the city was literally gated off from the rest of Venice. It wasn't until 1797 when Napoleon and the French army came in and seized the city that those gates were actually torn down, and now the Venetian ghetto was officially a part of the regular city of Venice without any barriers. The Venetian ghetto was at its height in the 17th century. It was around 5,000 Jews from Germany, France, the Ottoman Empire, Spain, all living in that one section of the city, each of them carving out their own little section. They maintained synagogues, they maintained their own synagogues. They had banks, they had businesses, merchant shops and shit like that. Even though they were confined to this one area, it was an opportunity for them to exchange culture. So they exchanged different languages, they exchanged different spices and foods and different types of cloths and things like that. In 2016, it was about 450 Jewish people who still live in Venice, and only a small fraction of them still actually stay in the Venetian ghetto. Now fast forward to America, basically all immigrants got the same kind of treatment, basically confined to one specific area, mainly coming into New York. They were all confined to one certain specific area. As far as African Americans, it was a little bit different. Now at the end of slavery, to escape the racism, overall find new opportunities, nearly 6 million African Americans migrated to the Northeast, the West Coast, and the Midwest in search of better opportunities, leaving behind the rural South that they knew. Now, because it's racist motherfuckers everywhere, the inner cities that the blacks fled to, coincidentally, whites started fleeing those cities, finding sanctuary in suburban areas. With the influx of black people, inner cities started to become overcrowded. So to accommodate for the new residents, the city started building low-rise and high-rise housing units. These were mixed income housings that can house many residents and were more accessible to black Americans because of the racism that plagued the real estate market at the time. After the Fair Housing Act in 1968 passed, more blacks, more middle class or wealthier blacks started leaving those low-rise and high-rise communities in search of suburban areas and residential housing. In turn, those left those low-rise and high-rise housing communities basically as low-income areas because those who could leave left. I think this is where the stigma comes from that public housing is for the poor, and also the fact that the government implemented the Section 8 program, which the tenant pays only a certain percentage of their entire rent while the government pays for the rest. They did this to keep residents in their houses longer. Add on things like poorly managed buildings, drugs being introduced, violence, and you got yourself a recipe for modern day hood. Now the topic of housing in America is very deep and complex. I'm just summarizing my take on it and what I understand to be true about it. I may have left certain things out, so you feel free to do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Now that the history lesson's over with, I wanted to explain to you guys why I wanted to make this video. I seen a video on YouTube a few years back in an interview with Complex rapper Vince Staples was showing them around the neighborhood he grew up in, which was in North Long Beach. Now, according to his music, the area he grew up in sounds like any regular hood growing up. You know, you got your fun days, and then you also have, you know, gangs, drugs, and violence at times, you know what I'm saying? Pretty normal stuff for real if you grow up in those kind of areas. Now, California is full of suburbs, period. They're full of houses, suburbs, cul-de-sacs, small communities and stuff, the whole entire state. And the housing projects that they do have are usually low-rise houses. I understand this to be true, but reading certain comments, I was seeing things like, his hood looks like Disney World compared to Lil Durk's. So this is what y'all call ghetto on the West Coast, huh? To me, it looks like a beautiful suburb to live in. Damn, that neighborhood looks like paradise to me. Where I'm from, nobody owns a house. Don't understand why they have to play gangster there. That neighborhood doesn't look bad at all. Better than what I grew up in. It kind of looks like a quiet neighborhood, to be honest. So those comments kind of confused me because I just didn't understand how you can just look at buildings or just look at certain things like that and to determine whether a neighborhood is bad or not. Like, that is, to me, that just doesn't make any sense. A lot of people have the idea of the hood being rundown buildings, pissy elevators, graffiti everywhere, dope needles everywhere, fiends everywhere, or 30 niggas standing outside of a project building or something, and that's not always the case. The hood is more than buildings. It's a mentality. Example of my own life. I'm from Hampton, Virginia. The neighborhood I grew up in was made up of 4 different places to live. You had Langley Square Apartments, which I stayed in. You had Mercury Square Townhouses. You had Selden Village, and then you have residential housing on Salem, Bland, and Ransom Street. For the most part, they were pretty clean areas. But if you're from Hampton, then you know about the square. You know that was the hood growing up. The buildings didn't make it hood. It was the people that made it hood. Gangs, drugs, and violence was all prevalent in my neighborhood. And not at a rampant or an alarming rate, but just enough to garner police attention. Other areas around the city like Shell Road, Phoebus, Rip Rap, Old Town, Lincoln Park. These aren't bad neighborhoods because of the buildings. They got that reputation because of the people who inhabit those buildings. All right, well maybe Old Town, Lincoln Park were bad buildings. That's probably why they tore them down. But you get what I'm saying. Especially with gentrification happening more and more often, you're gonna see certain buildings that are deemed unlivable or unsafe to get tore down, and they're getting replaced with more modern buildings. But that doesn't stop crime at all. Tearing down a building doesn't stop the crime. Look at Chicago. One of the reasons crime and violence started spiking in that city is because they tore down a lot of housing projects. They tore down projects like Cabrini Green on the north side, Robert Taylor Homes and Stateway Garden on the south side, and Rockwell Gardens and Henry Horner Homes on the west side. These buildings had between 1,100 and 4,400 units. That's a lot of people. That's thousands on top of thousands on top of thousands of people who are displaced from their original homes and having to be spread out all over the city. It's no secret that drugs, gangs, and violence were prevalent in those areas, in those neighborhoods. But as soon as you tear them down, all you're doing is essentially just, in a way, the crime and the violence were contained. They were really contained to those areas and a little bit of those surrounding areas. But once you tear down the projects, the people just start to spread out into different places. Like, they start to, now people who grew up on the south side are now on the west side, or people who are on the west side are now in the north side, and things like that. And you get people who are running into people that they never expected to run into from different gangs, and now they're clashing about that. They're clashing about different drug turfs and things like that. All you did was change their location. You didn't change their mentality. So they're still gonna carry on doing what they do no matter where they live, because that's just who they have cultivated themselves into being. That's how their mind is cultivated now. You know what I'm saying? And without changing that, without changing the way their minds are, it's not gonna do any good tearing down a housing project at all. You know the saying, you can take the nigga out the hood, but you can't take the hood out the nigga, man. Here's a fun fact. You know, Nipsey Hussle, Lil Baby, Quando Rondo, and Sue Surf all are affiliated with the same set, Rolling 60s or Neighborhood Crip. Shit, I got a homeboy from 60 Crip. Now, how is it possible that a gang based out of Los Angeles can have members or affiliates in Georgia, New Jersey, or even Virginia? It's the hood mentality. That's what it is. It's the hood mentality. Dudes come from certain areas and then either they move or they go on like summer vacation to different parts of the United States, and they take their hood mentality with them. They take their hood with them, and for however long they're out there, they basically do the same things that they were doing out there, just in a different area. And people around those areas, they start liking the lifestyle. They start seeing, oh, you know what I'm saying, he doing it, he getting money and all of this stuff. So they fall right into it. They fall in love with the lifestyle, so they fall right into it too. And then that's how you get some dude from some 2,000 miles away claiming a neighborhood he's never ever been in, let alone probably even seen. It's crazy. That shit happens all the time. Shit, it happened to my neighborhood growing up. That same gang, that same New York gang that Tekashi 6ix9ine was screaming out.
Treyway shit, man. Step on Treyway,
Treyway.
Treyway shit, man. Treyway shit, man.
What's up, man?
Treyway, nigga. It's fucking Treyway, man.
And is now currently snitching on. That's the same gang that operated in my neighborhood in the early 2000s. So again, it's not the buildings, it's the mentality. I can't even blame anyone that has that mentality. Like, it's a certain way you have to conduct yourself growing up in those neighborhoods to survive and to thrive. You got to do certain things to make it out of those environments. Growing up, you see a lot and you go through a lot, and certain things that you see and you do will make a kid lose their innocence at a very young age. Being exposed to those elements at such a young age can have lifetime effects on a kid growing up, man, for real. Even when you're able to escape those situations, just like a military vet coming back from his 3rd tour in Iraq, you still look at life different. Your outlook on life is different. Like, you just see things different, things you can't unsee, and it has a negative effect on your life. PTSD in the hood is a real thing, just like it is in the military, going to war. How would you feel growing up poor in one of the richest countries in the world? Until we change the mentality of those people that's living in the hood, ain't much gonna really change. I can tell you from personal experience, trying to get somebody out of that mindset or that mentality, it's extremely hard to do, man. You basically have to make them unlearn everything that they were taught in their formative years growing up. So that's no small feat. That's you just me saying that, in my understanding, like, I understand how difficult that is. You got to change basically the way they see the world, the way they've been seeing the world, because the people who were supposed to guide them failed them, and they failed them because somebody else failed them. It's a cycle, bruh. One thing I honestly think that can help, if you really want to change your mentality, or you know somebody and you want their mentality to change, one thing I would express to somebody to do is to go outside of your neighborhood. Like, travel. Like, when I say travel, I don't mean you gotta go out of state. I don't mean you gotta go different countries and nothing like that. Just go to maybe another city just to see how they live. Like, you can understand, once you understand that the world is bigger than your neighborhood and bigger than the block that you grew up on, you start to have an appreciation for certain things. You start to have an appreciation for life, and you start to realize how you grew up isn't normal. You know what I'm saying? I think we all have our own versions of normal, but just the way we grow up, the way we grew up is just not normal. You're not supposed to see your friends get killed. You're not supposed to, you know what I'm saying, yourself have to walk out the house with a gun every day to protect your life. That's not normal, you know what I'm saying? And you shouldn't accept that as being normal. The moment you accept that as your reality, that's the moment you lost, bro. I'm trying to tell you, that's the moment you lose. All in all, man, I just wanted to discuss the true nature of the hood. It's not some 30-story project building. It's not some tagged up, graffitied alleyway littered with dope needles. It's the people, man. More specifically, the people with fractured mind states. It's the sons whose father's doing life. It's the single mother who is struggling to pay rent. It's her son who's selling dope to help her pay the rent. It's the group of friends that known each other for so long, and then one of them gets killed, and they contemplating on getting revenge. It's the older brother whose little sister gets hit by a stray bullet, man. That's the hood right there. That's the hood. Instead of giving a fuck about where it happens, how about we try to give a fuck about who it's happening to? Hey, what do I know, man? Stay up, y'all. Peace.